Hello everyone, and welcome back to NPA Discovery, where we tell true stories that move, inspire, and sometimes shake you to your core. If you're passionate about real-life survival tales, history, and human resilience, you are in the right place. Today's video asks a question that feels almost impossible to answer. How does a 17-year-old girl survive falling over 10,000 feet from the sky, land in the heart of the Amazon rainforest, and live to tell the tale? This is the extraordinary story of Juliane Koepcke, a girl who became the sole survivor of a devastating plane crash in 1971. But let me tell you up front, this isn't just a survival story. It's a story about the power of preparation, the brutality of fate, and the strength of the human spirit. So make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay updated with more true stories that matter. And now, let's begin. A different childhood. Juliane Koepcke wasn't like most children. Born in Lima, Peru, to German parents who were both accomplished zoologists, her childhood was as unique as it was formative. While other kids were climbing monkey bars at recess, Juliane was hiking through the jungle with machetes, learning about the calls of jungle birds, and tagging along on ecological surveys with her parents, Hans Wilhelm and Maria Koepcke. Her parents had left Germany not for leisure or luxury, but for their passion, the Amazon. In the heart of the Peruvian rainforest, they established the Panguana Research Station, which still exists today. Imagine growing up in a place where your morning walk might mean dodging venomous snakes or observing exotic monkeys from tree canopies. For Juliane, this was simply home. From an early age, she learned that survival wasn't theoretical, it was practical. Her father taught her to identify snake tracks, to respect piranhas, and to understand the forest as both a giver and taker of life. Looking back, it becomes hauntingly clear that these lessons would soon become her only lifeline. But as educational as the jungle was, the Peruvian school system required Juliane to graduate in Lima. So at 17, she returned to the city with her mother to complete her exams. Just 2 days after her graduation, she and her mother booked a flight back to the jungle to spend Christmas with her father at the research station. The date was the 24th of December, 1971. A flight doomed from takeoff. Juliane and her mother boarded Lanza Flight 508, the last flight of the day bound for Pucallpa, a city on the edge of the jungle. The aircraft, a Lockheed L-188 Electra. Her father, Hans Wilhelm, knew the aircraft's dismal safety record all too well. More than a third of these planes had already been involved in catastrophic accidents. He begged them not to board it. But like many families caught up in the hustle of the holidays, Juliane and her mother just wanted to make it home for Christmas. The flight was delayed for over 7 hours. Passengers were weary, anxious, but eventually relieved to be heading home. The skies looked deceptively calm when they took off. But that illusion quickly shattered. Mid-flight, they flew straight into one of the worst storm systems in the region's recent memory. A thick curtain of black clouds swallowed the plane. Lightning crackled outside, turbulence rocked the fuselage violently, and panic spread like wildfire through the cabin. Passengers screamed. Overhead bins burst open. Food and drink containers went airborne. It was absolute chaos. Then it happened. A blinding bolt of lightning struck the wing. The next moments were a blur, suspended between life and death. Juliane would later recall that her mother, seated beside her, murmured, "This is the end." Then the fuselage cracked apart. Juliane, still strapped into her seat, was suddenly no longer in a plane. She was in the sky. The fall and the forest. To fall 10,000 feet and survive is something that defies logic. Experts believe Juliane's survival was possible due to a combination of factors. Being securely fastened in her seat, the cushioning effect of the dense jungle canopy, and even the angle and speed of her descent. Some say the seat may have acted like a crude parachute, flipping through the trees before finally stopping. She blacked out during the fall and woke up the next day, alone on the jungle floor. She had a broken collarbone, deep gashes on her legs and arms, one eye swollen shut, and a mild concussion. Her first thought, "I survived." But survival in the Amazon is a different kind of challenge. This is a place with venomous snakes, jaguars, stinging ants, deadly fungi, and relentless rain. And Juliane, still only 17, was dressed in a sleeveless mini dress and one sandal. Yet the forest was not entirely foreign to her. The sounds of birds and frogs were familiar. The scent of wet leaves, the layout of the land, she recognized it. And so, she made the critical decision. She would not stay and wait. She would walk out. Walking the edge of death, Juliane's first steps were slow, shaky, and uncertain. She was in pain, disoriented, and nearly blind in one eye. Her goal was simple: find a stream and follow it downstream. Her father had drilled that rule into her. In the jungle, water leads to life, to people, to rescue. She was in survival mode, making decisions minute by minute. Each hour in the rainforest brought new threats: venomous snakes camouflaged in the underbrush, insects that carried deadly diseases, and the ever-present risk of infection from her open wounds. She had no food, only a small bag of candy she'd scavenged from the wreckage, her only sustenance for days. On her fourth day in the jungle, Juliane came across a haunting sight. 3 passengers, still belted into their seats, had impacted the ground vertically. Their legs stuck out of the earth like fence posts. Juliane had never seen a dead body before. And now, at 17, she was seeing death up close, violent and raw. She feared one of them might be her mother. She crept closer. Then relief, a glimpse of toenail polish, told her it wasn't. That relief was brief. The jungle wasn't going to let her go that easily. The silent war. Within, Juliane pressed on, but the jungle's harshness wasn't just physical, it was psychological. After 5 days of solitude, her hope began to falter. Nights were the worst. The temperature dropped, her wounds ached, and the constant drone of insects became a torment. Her mind would drift into fear. Was she going in circles? Was help ever coming? The overhead sound of search planes brought both relief and dread. Relief that they were looking, dread that she could hear them. But they couldn't see her. Even worse, she realized she wasn't alone in her suffering. Buzzards, king vultures circled above, drawn by the scent of decay. They were nature's messengers, and what they foretold was horrifying. Juliane came across more bodies, and the sight shook her to the core. One cluster of corpses had decomposed under the heat and rain, their humanity slipping away with each passing day. At one point, maggots began infesting the open wound on her shoulder. She remembered something her father had done for a dog years earlier. Without antiseptics or medicine, she found an abandoned shelter, and there, a rusty can of gasoline. Desperate, she poured it over her wound. The pain was excruciating, but it worked. She spent the next hour pulling maggots from her arm, one by one. This wasn't survival anymore. It was warfare, and her body was the battleground. Salvation through suffering. By day 9, Juliane was emaciated, sunburned, and barely mobile. But the river she'd followed her lifeline finally led her to salvation. She spotted a boat tied near the bank and a path leading deeper into the jungle. Following it, she discovered a small hut, a shelter used by local loggers. To her, it looked like paradise. Though it lacked food, it held something invaluable: gasoline. Recalling how her father treated a similar wound in a family pet, she poured the gasoline over the maggot-infested gash. The pain was unimaginable, a white-hot wave of agony. But it drove the maggots out. Weak but relieved, she collapsed under the shelter and passed out. She awoke to voices. 3 Peruvian loggers had returned. At first, they mistook her ghostly figure for a jungle spirit. But she managed to croak out her story in perfect Spanish, and they realized the truth. Juliane was saved. The sky didn't win. Juliane Koepcke's story is more than survival, it's transformation. From the skies to the soil, she endured trauma most can't even imagine. But instead of succumbing to bitterness, she transformed her pain into purpose. She preserved the jungle that nearly claimed her. She educated others. She kept living. If you've been moved by this story, let it be a reminder that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it limps. Sometimes it crawls. Sometimes it cries. But it still moves forward. Please like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more powerful stories that prove just how resilient the human spirit can be. Thank you for watching. And remember, even when it feels like everything is falling apart, you might just be falling into place.